Welcome back to the channel. Today, we dive into a chapter of Hollywood's past that still sends chills down people's spines. AIDS, once called the disease of the century, wasn't just feared, it was a death sentence. And in the 1980s, during some of the darkest years in entertainment history, that fear hit even harder. Imagine the terror of hearing that diagnosis back then. Now imagine being one of the 15 black actresses who faced it alone, in silence, in shame. Some had no clue until their bodies were so weak, so drained, that they were only shadows of the women they used to be. In this video, we uncover their stories, raw, painful, and haunting. Prepare yourself for the tragedies that followed, stories that leave you numb, cold, and unable to forget. Let's begin. Sharon Redd, the disco queen who lit up New York, only to be taken down by a single, tragic moment. Sharon wasn't just a singer, she was the pulse of the 70s and 80s dance floors. Her voice shook the walls of Paradise Garage, and for a time, she lived like a star destined to burn forever. But her fall didn't come from drugs, scandal, or recklessness. It came from something so small, so cruel, that most people never heard the real story behind it. According to long-whispered rumors, during a 1981 performance at Paradise Garage, Sharon hit the climax of her song, spun in the spotlight, and stepped onto a shard of broken glass that had fallen from a stage prop. The crowd thought the splash of dark red across the floor was part of the show. Behind the curtains, Sharon staggered into her assistant's arms, bleeding heavily. In the chaos, someone grabbed old, unsterilized medical tools to stop the bleeding. And that, some say, was the moment HIV silently entered her bloodstream, an invisible sentence she would spend the rest of her life fighting. The change came slowly, then all at once. Her once strong body began to shrink, her skin turned pale, her fiery voice, once powerful enough to command a room, grew thin and fragile. Each performance became a battle. She would sing 2 lines, then clutch her chest, trying to catch enough breath to continue. And when the stage lights went dark, the coughs began, violent, chest-rattling spasms that left her gripping the walls just to stay standing. One afternoon in a Manhattan studio, she collapsed during a recording session, too weak to lift herself from the floor. Swollen lesions appeared on her skin. Painful sores spread inside her mouth, secrets she tried desperately to hide from even her closest friends. A late-night emergency room visit finally revealed the truth doctors feared. The disease was spreading faster than anyone realized. Friends said Sharon stopped looking in the mirror because each time she did, she saw a stranger, a ghost of the woman she once was. On May 1, 1992, Sharon Redd was finally admitted to a New York hospital, drained of all strength, barely able to move. Her closest friends gathered around her bed, watching helplessly as she drifted in and out of consciousness. The world didn't know it, but Sharon wasn't alone at the end. One of her former lovers stayed by her side, holding her hand through the final nights. But even love couldn't save her. The night before she died, Sharon collapsed in her hospital room. She tried to reach for the phone, but her arms were too weak. A dangerously high fever blurred her vision, and she fell into a haze, unaware that her body was shutting down. The friend who stayed with her said he stood there shaking, on the verge of tears, unable to do anything but watch. When the news finally broke, the press delivered it with cold detachment. Another name. Another headline. Another legend gone. But what they never told you is that Sharon Redd didn't just die from pneumonia and AIDS. She died fighting loneliness, pain, and a secret she carried until her final breath. Dorothy Dandridge, the woman Hollywood crowned, then quietly abandoned. She was the first black woman ever nominated for an Oscar, a luminous force who ruled the 1950s with beauty, grace, and a talent that could stop time. Audiences adored her. Studios chased her. The world believed she was untouchable. But no one imagined her story would end with a cold, lifeless body in a silent apartment, and a secret that still haunts Hollywood. By the early 1960s, Dorothy's life began to unravel in ways no one could explain. She started losing weight rapidly. Her once radiant skin turned pale and hollow. The fevers came without warning, burning through her nights and stealing her strength. Every movement felt like a battle. Once the embodiment of elegance, She became a fragile shadow, withdrawing from parties, friends, and the glamorous world she once conquered. Doctors insisted it was depression, but her body told a different story. Her immune system was collapsing. Infections struck again and again. Painful sores left her unable to eat or drink normally. Some days she could barely lift a cup of tea, her hands shaking, her vision dimming through the haze of fever. A close friend remembered one night in 1963, Dorothy was supposed to attend an important Hollywood event, but when the friend came to check on her, she found Dorothy sitting alone on the floor in the dark, hands pressed against her head, tears streaming down her face as she whispered she couldn't take the pain anymore. And then came the whispers. Rumors tied her to Howard Hughes, the reclusive billionaire and one of the most powerful men in Hollywood. Their romance was a well-kept secret, until hindsight painted it with tragedy. Many now believe Dorothy may have contracted a then mysterious virus through those relationships, long before the world had a name for HIV. The passion, the luxury, the private nights, followed by an invisible destruction no one recognized at the time. On September 8, 1965, the world's brightest star faded out completely. Her apartment was unnervingly silent. No phone calls. No movement. When police finally broke down the door, they found Dorothy alone, cold, still, and gone. The official report blamed an overdose of antidepressants. But almost no one believed it. And so, in a cruel twist, Dorothy Dandridge's legacy became a paradox. She is celebrated as a trailblazer in Hollywood history, yet the truth surrounding her tragic, suspicious final days was buried, left to die a second time, just like the woman who changed everything. Audre Lorde, dying with fire in her veins. AIDS was tearing her body apart, but the world never saw the full truth. To most people, Audre wasn't just a poet, she was a warrior. A woman who used every word like a blade, slicing through racism, sexism, and silence in America. But even warriors carry wounds the world never sees. In 1978, when Audre discovered she had breast cancer, it felt like the floor disappeared beneath her feet. Surgeries chilled her to the bone. Radiation scorched her skin. The pain was relentless, but her spirit wasn't. Through the cancer journals, she turned her suffering into a manifesto, an oath that she would not be broken, not even by her own failing body. Yet, hidden behind her courage was another battlefield, one almost no one dared to name. In the late 70s, as Audre fought cancer, she also fell deeply in love with a young dancer, someone whose embrace brought warmth during her darkest nights. What she did not know was that he carried a silent, deadly virus. HIV was still whispered about as a disease for other people, something distant, something unspeakable. He may not have known he had it, or maybe he simply stayed silent. But their passion came with a shadow attached, one that followed her for the rest of her life. While cancer consumed her strength, HIV crept in quietly, attacking what was left. Soon, the two diseases waged war inside her. Her coughs grew violent. Her skin broke into painful sores. Fevers burned through her like wildfire. Day by day, Audre's body weakened, though her spirit refused to bow. By October 1992, she could no longer stand. She lay in bed, breathless, starving, trembling, but still writing. Her final pages were smeared with sweat, tears, and ink that blurred under shaking hands. Even as her body betrayed her, she kept fighting for truth, for justice, for the lives of those who had been silenced the same way she was. On November 17, 1992, Audre Lorde slipped away quietly. The world claimed cancer killed her because saying AIDS was still taboo. But those who loved her knew the full weight of her struggle, knew that she left this world carrying 2 death sentences. That day, the rain fell hard, as if the sky itself mourned a woman who fought until her final breath, a star extinguished too soon, but one whose light never stopped burning. Dorian Corey, the legendary ballroom queen, and the suitcase that froze New York in horror. For years, she ruled the ballroom scene with towering gowns, razor-sharp wit, and a gaze that could cut through steel. On stage, she was untouchable. But behind that glittering facade was a tiny apartment hiding a truth darker than any ballroom shade. When the AIDS crisis swept through the 1980s, It struck the ballroom community like a silent hurricane. Dorian, already an icon, wasn't spared. Whispers claimed she had fallen for a man lost in addiction, a quiet, dangerous love that left her infected. No one ever spoke openly, but as her body weakened, her skin scarred, and her once piercing eyes dimmed, everyone knew she was fighting HIV. She withdrew from the spotlight, spending her final years sewing gowns in solitude, wrapped in fabric, feathers, and silence. In 1993, Dorian Corey died from AIDS-related complications. Her story could have ended there. But fate had one last, chilling twist. While cleaning her apartment, friends found a massive suitcase buried in a corner. Inside was the mummified body of Robert Worley, a man who'd vanished in the 1960s. Wrapped tightly in plastic, curled like a forgotten curse, his remains turned Dorian's home into an instant crime scene. The media erupted, tabloids screaming her name. But the true tragedy was far more haunting. A dying queen, alone with failing health, her legacy instantly overshadowed by a corpse she may have carried for decades. Questions spread like wildfire. Was Dorian involved in Robert Worley's death? Did she know the truth all along? Or was the suitcase a terrifying symbol of the battles she silently fought as her life unraveled? In the end, people remembered the gowns, but whispered about the body. Dorian Corey's story became a double tragedy. AIDS took her life, and society buried her legacy beneath fear, shame, and rumors she never had the chance to explain. Sylvester, a final breath in his mother's arms. Sylvester wasn't just a disco star. He was disco, the soaring falsetto behind You Make Me Feel, Mighty Real, the androgynous icon who turned every dance floor into a sanctuary where queer people could breathe, love, and simply exist. In a time when the world mocked anyone who dared to be different, Sylvester walked in heels, wore glitter, and sang with a freedom most people only dreamed of. His courage lit up the stage, but it also placed him directly in the path of a silent storm that was tearing through his community. When the disco era dimmed, Sylvester stayed in San Francisco, hosting legendary all-night parties in the city that lived on its own pulse of sexual liberation. Behind the glamour, though, danger lurked. Drag performers shared everything: makeup, hormones, painkillers, even medical syringes. One reused needle. One moment of trust. That's all it took. HIV slipped into his bloodstream without warning and without mercy. By 1987, the decline became undeniable. The body that once danced under flashing lights now trembled under the weight of fevers and pneumonia that refused to loosen their grip. Still, Sylvester performed. He sang through gasps of air, smiling at fans who had no idea they were applauding a man in the final chapters of his life. By mid-1988, he could no longer walk. A wheelchair carried him, and an oxygen tube kept him alive. His once radiant frame had become skin stretched thin over bone, yet his spirit refused to dim. On December 16, 1988, in his San Francisco home, Sylvester took his last breath in his mother's arms. He was only 41. In his will, he left everything to AIDS prevention groups, turning his death into one final act of defiance and love. Sylvester's life was a celebration of freedom. His death, a heartbreaking reminder of the devastation AIDS carved into an entire generation. Through pain, through courage, through music that still shakes the soul, Sylvester remains both a triumph and a tragedy the world must never forget. Orish Grinstead, the young star whose light was stolen long before her time. Orish Grinstead wasn't just another member of 702, she was the heartbeat of the group, the voice critics believed would rise to stand alongside the biggest R&B names of the late 90s. She was young, stunning, and overflowing with ambition. To the world, it looked like her journey was only just beginning. But behind that bright, rising star was a story that still feels too cruel to believe. According to whispers within the community, Orish fell deeply in love with a man she trusted, a man who was secretly living with HIV. Instead of protecting her, he betrayed her in the most unforgivable way. That moment of betrayal became a silent sentence. Her health declined rapidly. Her immune system collapsed, cancer took hold, and every breath became a battle against pain no one could see. On April 20, 2008, in Marin County, Nevada, Orish Grinstead passed away at just 29 years old. Friends said that only months earlier, she was still performing, still singing with that powerful voice that made people stop and listen. But her decline was so sudden, so brutal, that many refused to believe it was real. Her death stands as a heartbreaking reminder: even the brightest talent can be extinguished in an instant, not by lack of skill, but by betrayal, illness, and a kind of pain the world never sees. A young voice, a promising life, a tragedy no one deserved. Roxy Roker, the beloved TV mother, and the woman whose real life became a mystery no one dared to solve. In the 70s and 80s, she was a familiar face in millions of homes, best known as Helen Willis on The Jeffersons, where she helped make television history with one of the first interracial kisses ever seen on screen. Off camera, she carried another legacy as the mother of rock icon Lenny Kravitz. But behind the bright smile and groundbreaking career, Roxy's final years were shadowed by a quiet, unsettling decline. By the early 90s, her body had grown fragile. A constant cough, unexplained infections, and sudden cancellations of film shoots raised questions the press couldn't fully answer. Official reports said breast cancer. But in Hollywood, whispers spread, rumors of a deeper, more devastating collapse of her immune system. Some close friends believed an undiagnosed condition, possibly even HIV, was eating away at her strength. Then came the moment that shocked everyone. At a rare public appearance in 1994, Roxy looked almost unrecognizable. The once radiant actress appeared thin, exhausted, her hair thinning as if life itself was slipping away. Her voice, once warm and inviting, sounded raw, as though every word burned her throat. The crowd fell silent. The woman they remembered simply wasn't there anymore. On December 2, 1995, Roxy Roker died in Los Angeles at just 66. Her death certificate named metastatic breast cancer. But the whispers never stopped. And maybe that's the real tragedy. Not just that she died too soon, but that the full truth of her suffering may have been buried with her, locked away to protect the image of a trailblazing woman who changed television forever. Pat Parker, the woman forced to carry 2 death sentences in one small, unbreakable body. In the 70s and 80s, Pat Parker's voice was the heartbeat of Black feminism. Her poetry didn't just speak, it struck. Each line was a blade against racism, a rallying cry for women pushed to the margins, a fire that refused to dim. But behind that power, an invisible enemy was quietly closing in. According to those who loved her, Pat contracted HIV from a partner. At that time, even whispering the word AIDS meant social exile. So Pat, the woman who wrote fearlessly about injustice, was forced into silence. The virus drained her strength, tearing down her immune system piece by piece. And in that weakened state, the breast cancer she once fought into remission returned with a vengeance. 2 fatal battles. One fragile frame. HIV stealing her defenses. Cancer burning through whatever was left. In early 1989, Pat was still on stage, reading poems with a voice that shook audiences to their core. They saw a thin, tired face. They did not see the way she collapsed backstage, clutching her chest, fighting waves of pain that made it hard to breathe. Her nights were filled with quiet sobs, not because she feared death, but because her body no longer had the strength to hold a pen. On June 17, 1989, Pat Parker died in Oakland at just 45 years old. Her passing was a double tragedy. AIDS erased her defenses, cancer claimed her life, and society, gripped by stigma and fear, erased the truth of her suffering. A poet who spent her whole life fighting silence was forced to leave this world in silence. Her voice deserved more. Her truth deserved to be spoken. And today we say it out loud. Pepper LaBeija. The forbidden love that led her to the edge. Pepper LaBeija was the unstoppable queen of the ballroom, a living monument, the legendary founding mother of the House of LaBeija, and a shimmering force who ruled 3 unforgettable decades. But even royalty wasn't safe from the cruelest disease of her era. In 1987, Pepper's young lover, a Harlem dancer, died quietly in a tiny apartment. The death certificate claimed pneumonia, but the ballroom community whispered the truth. It was AIDS. And with those whispers came a darker rumor. that their love had planted the invisible seed that would one day kill her too. Still, Pepper refused to disappear. She floated through the ballroom in gowns draped in gold, her presence undeniable. But behind that brilliance, her body was quietly losing the fight. The coughing fits she hid behind fans, the swelling in her legs, the sharp chest pains she endured in silence. These were the private battles of a queen determined to stay standing. By 2001, the illusion shattered. Pepper appeared in public for the first time in a wheelchair. The community froze. The fierce, commanding mother of the ballroom had become a fragile figure, swollen, exhausted, her once luminous face dimmed with pain. After that, she rarely left her apartment. Friends said she often cried in front of the mirror, unable to recognize the woman she had become. On May 14, 2003, Pepper LaBeija died in a New York hospital at just 54 years old. Her records listed heart failure, but the ballroom already knew the truth. AIDS had taken her piece by piece, stealing the breath of a woman who once lit up the world. Pepper didn't just pass away. She faded in silence, a brilliant icon turned tragic by a disease that stole far too many. Paris Dupree, the woman who helped shape a movement, paid one of the bitterest prices for survival. Paris Dia wasn't just another drag queen. She was the legend who sparked the art of voguing at a Harlem ball in 1981, a moment that lit a fire under an entire generation. Her grace, her confidence, her snap-sharp poses would inspire dancers, artists, and creators across the world. But behind the glitter and spotlights, a quiet danger was spreading through the very community she helped build. Friends later revealed that Paris often shared hormone needles with other queens, a common but risky habit at a time when HIV was barely understood. That's how the virus found her. By the mid-2000s, Paris's health began collapsing. She was in and out of hospitals with pneumonia. Her skin broke into painful ulcers. Her body shrank until she barely resembled the fierce icon who once commanded ballroom floors. And when people asked about her condition, Paris would simply smile, a small, practiced smile, as if protecting the myth she created was more important than revealing how much she was suffering. In August 2011, Paris Durai passed away in New York City. There was no glamorous tribute, no national headline, not even a proper obituary. Just a few short lines in a local paper. But in the ballroom world, the truth echoed louder than any printed words. Paris died from AIDS-related complications. The real tragedy? The mother of voguing, the woman whose art taught millions how to express themselves, spent her final days in silence, as if the world wanted to erase both her struggle and her truth. A legend born on the dance floor, gone without the applause she deserved. Venus Xtravaganza, the star who burned too bright to survive. Venus wasn't just a member of the House of Xtravaganza, she was its heartbeat. Youthful, glamorous, and unapologetically herself, Venus became the unforgettable face of Paris is Burning. But behind the sparkle was a girl fighting for her future. At 23, she turned to sex work to fund her transition, all while hiding a worsening cough, sudden weight loss, and whispers that a wealthy client may have infected her with HIV. Venus kept it all secret, terrified that her rising image as a ballroom goddess would crumble. Then December 1988 arrived, cold, dark, and merciless. Venus vanished. For days, her friends searched and hoped. On December 21st, police found her strangled and hidden beneath a bed in a dingy Manhattan hotel. A life full of light, silenced in the shadows. As if the violence wasn't cruel enough, the rumors didn't stop after death. They only grew louder, speculating about her health, her choices, her worth. A young angel was taken not just by a killer's hands, but by a society that punishes those brave enough to live in their truth. Venus's story reminds us, sometimes it's not the blow that kills, but the whisper that never ends. Cheryl Lynn, the voice that once shook the world, then disappeared into the darkest silence of the century. In 1978, her electrifying hit Got to Be Real turned her from a studio unknown into a global disco and R&B sensation almost overnight. Her voice wasn't just heard, it lifted dance floors, lit up radios, and echoed across oceans. But just when her star was burning its brightest, Cheryl vanished without a trace. By the early 90s, she was gone from TV, gone from touring, gone from the music scene entirely. And the quieter she became, the louder the whispers grew. On old disco forums and fan boards, rumors spread like wildfire. People claimed Cheryl had contracted HIV, that she retreated into hiding because the stigma was too cruel, too unforgiving. Some insisted she had already died years earlier and that her family kept it secret to protect the last shred of dignity of a woman who once ruled the spotlight. A diva without an obituary. A legend without a final chapter. Just a long, painful silence. Cheryl Lynn, the woman whose voice once made the world explode with joy, became a ghost, lost in rumor, lost in tragedy, and consumed by a disease that defined an era of fear. Her absence left behind a haunting question. How can someone so powerful disappear so completely? Marsha P. Johnson, the legend who drowned under shadows far darker than illness. Marsha wasn't just a drag queen in the 1969 Stonewall Uprising. She was the heartbeat of the movement. A black trans icon who stared down police batons, marched through fear, and became the light for thousands of LGBTQ people who had no voice, no safety, and no place to belong. But by the late 80s, AIDS was tearing through the queer community like a silent storm. Friends watched Marsha shrink, weight loss, infections, fatigue so deep it dimmed even her radiant smile. She hid every symptom, terrified that admitting weakness would break the symbol she had spent her life becoming. Whispers spread that HIV was slowly wearing her down, leaving her vulnerable in ways she never allowed the world to see. Yet in the end, AIDS wasn't what stole Marsha P. Johnson from the world. On July 6, 1992, her body was found floating in the Hudson River, cold, twisted, and discarded like a secret someone wanted to erase. Police took one glance and stamped her death as suicide by drowning, a conclusion as careless as it was cruel. But the community she fought for refused to believe it. Marsha, the woman who stood fearless at Stonewall, who survived beatings, homelessness, and hatred, would not simply give up and disappear into the river. Activists insisted her death wasn't suicide. They believed she'd been targeted, harmed, silenced. Rumors swirled that she'd been living with AIDS, a truth she'd kept hidden, and that her weakened state made her an easy victim for those who wanted to punish her or destroy what she represented. The queer community rose in outrage. They marched with her photo held high, chanting her name through the streets she once defended. They demanded justice. They demanded answers. They demanded the world acknowledge that something was deeply wrong. Because Marsha's death wasn't just another tragedy. It was a blow to a movement she had given her life to. A warning to every queer person daring to rise. A reminder that even icons, especially icons, are not safe from violence, erasure, and the darkness that hunts those who challenge society's rules. Marsha P. Johnson didn't just die. She was taken. And the fight that followed became part of her legacy, one that still echoes through every march, every pride flag, and every voice that refuses to be silent. Esther Phillips, the blues siren with a voice that could stop time, spent her final years unraveling under a shadow she could never outrun. She rose to fame as a teenager, her smoky, haunting tone captivating America from the very first note. But as her star climbed higher, the darkness around her quietly tightened its grip. By the late 1970s, the signs were impossible to ignore. The fiery young diva who once commanded the stage now walked out trembling, her legs unsteady, her fingers wrapped around the microphone like it was the only thing keeping her alive. Her decline began with violent coughing fits, fevers that wouldn't break, and a string of hospitalizations for what doctors called recurring pneumonia. Today, we know those symptoms all too well. Her bandmates remembered what the medical charts didn't. Mouth sores that never healed. Blood at the corner of her lips every time she hit a high note. Nights where she would collapse after performing, too weak to stand, too exhausted to even speak. The most heartbreaking moment came backstage, when Esther fainted, and her assistant lifted her as easily as lifting a child. She had become weightless. Skin, bones, and a fading voice the world had once worshipped. Rumors whispered through the industry like smoke. That HIV had ravaged her body. That the truth was known, but too dangerous to say out loud. On August 7, 1984, Esther Phillips died in a Los Angeles hospital at just 48 years old. The press blamed heroin-induced liver failure. But among musicians, the ones who knew her best, the quiet consensus was different. They believed AIDS stole her life, hidden behind a curtain of silence to avoid scandal, outrage, and uncomfortable truths. The real tragedy wasn't just Esther's death, it was the way her brilliance was allowed to fade, erased by a lie, buried by a society terrified of naming the truth. A voice that once held the world breathless was forced into silence long before it should have been. And with this, we close the chapter on 15 Black female artists whose lives were quietly destroyed by an epidemic no one dared to discuss. But here's the question that lingers. How many more stories like this are still buried in Hollywood's past? Share your thoughts in the comments, hit like, and don't forget to subscribe for more untold stories the world tried to hide.